Hello, everybody. It's good to have you come and join with us this night. I was just talking about some different people that's not here tonight. They've had some storms and things. We had some storms come through earlier. Terry, did you have any storms come through your way?
We had some rain that was actually, the winds were so high it was like horizontal with
Sideways.
the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of them Forrest Gump rains.
I mean,
So
we started out just under 70 this morning around 7 o'clock, and it was low 40s when we got home, and winds blowing about 10 miles an hour. It's got a cold chill.
I think it's like 41 or 39 something here
It's
already.
it's heading right there where we're at here too. Big coast.
But I used to say, if you don't like the weather here in East Tennessee or Tennessee, just hang around. It'll change. But I found out it's that way everywhere. Um, weather
So, you,
changes.
so you're a proponent of weather change?
No, no. Let, let me welcome everybody tuning in to Power Faith Radio
Y'all
tonight.
just got to ignore Scotty now. We just like picking on each other.
Yeah. So we thank everybody for being here through Power Faith Radio. We've got a lot of great comments about what we're doing now, the Q&As. They're really getting a lot of great understanding through it. And so we really appreciate them hanging in there. And those, if you're watching, or maybe you're watching live, maybe you're watching the recording on either one of the two Facebook pages, A Simple Walk or B'nai Knock Fellowship, we thank you so much for watching that. Please ask those questions. Give us a thumbs up. Simple Walk, you can share those videos with all your social media platform. As always, it's sponsored by Outreach Noah. You can find us at a couple different places. Outreach Noah YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, type in Outreach Noah. We'll come up. Subscribe to us while you're there. Hit that notification bell that you'll be notified every time a new video goes up. I'm doing pretty good. Terry, I'm doing pretty good. And you can go to the webpage, outreachnoah.com. Send us an email to outreachnoah@gmail.com. Terry, you
All
want
right.
everybody in the Zoom room tonight?
Yes, greetings, everyone. And of course, Scotty, he's down there in the engine room running the warp drive. We're going to see how good a driver he is
Yeah.
tonight. Got to pick on him a little more.
Yeah, and because
Poke the bear.
Yeoman Asher is not here, but,
Yeah.
but Ronald's here, and he's taking care of that area. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well as she's our yeoman. She keeps Scotty and I straight.
Yeah.
So Ronald's here, and Bob, and then Chrissy's joined us again tonight, and Will, and the other one that keeps Scotty straight, Annie.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Scotty's better for half.
That's a fact. That's a fact. We've been married. We've almost been married all of our lives. We got married when we was 18, and we're now 63. So if we just added 18 years to our marriage, we would have been married all of our life. So, okay, that's all I got to say about that.
That's got to be something up there in the mountains, right?
Yeah.
No, that's all. Anyhow, greetings everyone. Tonight we're going to continue our Q&A. Scotty's got a lineup of questions and things for us to talk about tonight. And if you have any, if you get any that comes to mind after this class, just be sure to get them, Scotty, and we'll continue. We've not set an exactly time when we're going to get back into our book. There are people that are definitely wanting us to continue our discussions here, which we're fine with that. We can always get back into our book study at any time. So just send your questions in, and we'll get right to them. Scotty, are you about ready?
I am ready. All right. Again, I always like to say appreciate everybody that participates in our Sadaka time. Those of you that send names in, we thank you so much for doing that. So we're going to get right into it tonight. As always, we love to give a Sadaka for Terry and I's main teacher, he and his wife, Pesach and Shira Sherbo. They live in Sfat, Israel. And I don't know if anybody saw the videos that Pesach put up this week where he's delivering meals to the soldiers. So we thank him for doing that. Also in our Sadaka time tonight, we have Clifford and Harleen Hool in our tzedakah time. Also, Nadine Akins in our tzedakah time tonight. Ernie Kessler is on our tzedakah list tonight. Ernie just underwent some back surgery. In fact, I think he's still in the hospital now. He just got in recovery a short time ago. So we're giving tzedakah for Ernie. And then also William and Tina Lyons. We have them on our tzedakah list this week. Also, as we continue to have Wendy Shepard in our tzedakah list tonight. Also, Warwick Marshall. We have Warwick in our tzedakah list tonight. And also Ronald Dickman. Ronald, give us a little update about your upcoming adventures.
Well, I won't be with you next week because I'll be in having my operation finally. I'll probably only be in overnight, and all going well the next morning, they'll throw me out between 9:30 and 10 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm not allowed to drive for a week, and I'll be in pretty much a fair bit of pain for the first few days, and then should start to dissipate. And then we can sort out if the secondary problem I've got is associated with the first, or it's a new issue to deal with.
Now, is this if you don't mind me asking, Ron, what type of operation is this they're going to be doing?
It's a hernia operation. And in the last 6 months, I've had the other detail of pain and lack of and loss of weight, and we don't know if that's associated or it's another issue yet until this one's fixed.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to continue to give tzedakah for you. Now, my wife just brought me some information.
Should you put Danielle on that?
I had her. That's Nadine.
Her name's Nadine?
Yeah. Okay. She just told me somebody put on there, and we call her two different things, Danielle or Nadine. So, yes, she is on our list. Thank you, honey. Ronald, we're going to continue to keep you on our tzedakah list, and I know you'll keep us updated on the day of surgery and the outcome and all those things there. Okay, also on our tzedakah list tonight, somebody always sends in $1 for Amuela. So this is Amuela's dollar. We're not sure where she's at tonight, but we're giving tzedakah that somebody else is sent in with Amuela's name on it. They also include $1 for Veronica Port, and she's been under the weather. And then also Thomas Schaus, he's on our tzedakah list tonight. Also, we have on our tzedakah list Larry and Rita Beck. And then also, of course, Wendell didn't get to be here tonight. They've had some storms up there, but we're giving Thanksgiving tzedakah for Mary Parsons. And then on our blessed memory tonight, we have Patricia Ann Blair. Now, before we do our prayer tonight, I would like to just ask everybody here to do something. Train yourself to give tzedakah. Now, let me just kind of go into it this way. Train yourself. As you leave your home, every time you leave your home, purposely put some change or a couple of dollar bills in your pocket and look for a charity box. I know here where I live in Tennessee, we've got a lot of people that's sick and out of work. And when you go into certain establishments, they have a charity box there. They're taking up money to help the individual that's out of work because of sickness. And you can really make a difference in somebody's life. You can really impact their life. And that's probably one of the greatest tzedakah's charity to give is when the person that's receiving it doesn't know your name. And you just drop that in, and while you're there, make sure you give a prayer for that person. So just train yourself to do that. Every time you leave, you will find that the Creator, Hashem, will, once you start training yourself, will purposely put things in your path. Just it'll get greater and greater and greater. So this week I was at one of the local home improvement stores. I'm not going to give them a plug, but there was a gentleman that could not get the electric scooter to work. They only had one. Somebody else had the other two, and he could not get it to work. And they had a wheelchair over there. And I heard the lady say, you know, we've got this wheelchair. If you want to use it, it's got a buggy on it. And he says, well, I can't move it. And somebody, I'll just put it like that, stepped up and told that gentleman, look, you get in this wheelchair and I'll push you wherever you need to go. And it took about an hour, checked him out, took him back to his automobile, loaded his stuff, took the wheelchair back in. And people noticed that. That's what you're trying to do, is get people to say, hey, I want to do that too. That just gives me such a great feeling. I want to do that too. So let's train yourself. Train yourself.
Hey, Scotty,
Yes.
I'd like to add a name to the list if you don't mind.
Yes.
Andrew's dad, Al.
Oh yes. How is
Overhaul.
he?
He's just going through some stuff. Could use some prayer.
And what's his full name? Do you know what they're?
Just Al Overhaul is all I know him.
Al.
Overhaul.
Okay. We're giving tzedakah right now for Al. Help us pray, would you? Hear our voice, Adonai. Our God, Father of mercy, have compassion on us and accept our prayers with compassion and favor. For you are a God who hears prayers and supplications. Our King, do not send us away empty-handed. Favor us and answer us and listen to our prayers. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Terry. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We've got to
Just have to bear with me a little bit because this weather came in about an hour and a half ago. The old sinuses went to draining on me.
Okay.
When it's nice and warm and then go.
Yeah.
They get all confused.
As Terry was saying, we was talking before we come in, I left the house this morning. It was 71 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And by 2 o'clock, it was already 48 degrees. We had storms go by and the temperature.
And the winds picked up and it makes it feel colder than what it is.
Yeah, it was that. And as Terry said before we got here, it was that sideways rain. I don't know. I didn't see no clouds out there, but that's where the rain was coming from. So, okay. So Terry, we got a little holdover questions, and the person who are actually a couple of people, so I'm going to just kind of paraphrase this a little bit and add my own texture into it so I can get the information across on it. I know we talked about the plurality, so I didn't have any trouble saying it that time. The plurality of God and his name, the plurality in the name, but let's talk about powers, as in, so I'm going to introduce the sun. The sun has powers. The earth seemingly has power. The wind, as we were talking, seemingly has powers. So how do these things have power, and is this power of their own? Let's go at it that way first.
Well, it's definitely not of their own. The Creator created every one of these things, and he instilled certain laws like he has here on the earth within each one, and he gives its power to do what it's supposed to do. Just like the cornstalk was given power, it's given a certain set of laws that makes it a cornstalk, and it produces corn, and it's the power of life that's within it. And so all the power, like we were saying, a few weeks ago, the Creator doesn't need us for his existence to be there. But our existence need his, because our existence came from him. Well, so did the existence of the the moon, the stars, the clouds, everything that's within spiritual, what we call spiritual, that which is not seen, and everything that is physical, everything we see, came from him and through him, and he powers it all. All the power comes from him. It's not separate. He governs all the power of all life and everything that's in creation.
So with a quick overview, how do people tend to give these things godlike powers?
Here you go. Now,
yeah.
just Bear with me. I can answer that.
I know you can. That's why I asked it. While you're looking for that, I know that a lot of people tend.
I can tell you where it started at.
Okay, I know a lot of people tend to worship these things as if they are a god, are in charge of certain things. So go ahead. How long? Just flip on over there.
Give me a few seconds to find. I know where I'm wanting to go. It discusses the generation of Enosh. I'm trying to remember if it's in. Might be in Hamada, the one I've got here for tonight.
While you're looking for that,
I'm
Terry,
like a lawyer. I read so much and I got so much going everywhere. I know about where it's at. I just got to.
I understand it. I understand exactly.
Just give me just a few seconds here.
I probably should have sent these to you prior, but see, this just shows it's live. It's not set up here. So
Not Memorex.
yeah. Now you just showed your age, Terry.
Because I've covered this. Yeah, I've covered this chapter before. Hold on here. I'm having to look at the Hebrew and then go look at the English. There we go. 446. Probably could have asked Bob there and he probably could have told me the page number. There we go.
Okay, while you're reading that, I'm going to go do some things over here on a couple different platforms.
Hold on here. Let me. All right. Scotty kind of asked the question about where it all began. I guess that'd be a good place to start there, Scotty. The Rambam covers this subject in the Mishnah Torah underneath the. Let me go back over here in the English because right here it just says the Hebrew. It's the laws that governs the prohibition against the worship stars, spiritual forces, and the statues of idolaters. It's more or less Yolkot, Vadot. I can try to say the third word. Never mind. I know Bob probably. Can you pronounce that? Kokachavim. I guess that's how it's pronounced. Yeah, so it's laws that governs the worship of stars. Where this began at, and we can see how the ancient people, we have pretty much in the modern age, even this, the more modern Torah scholars and sages says predominantly the majority of humanity no longer operates at this level here that happened at the days of Enosh, the grandson of Adam, that we've moved away as mankind's moved away of it. But where did it begin? What happened? And the Rambam writes says, during the times of Enosh, the grandson of Adam, mankind made a great mistake, and the wise men of that generation gave thoughtless counsel. Enosh himself was one of those who erred. Their mistake was as follows. And if you really think about this as a reader, you can see how simple really this was you can see how it's just, you can almost see the practicality in it, but because of that, a mistake was made. Their mistake was as follows. They said, God created stars and spears with which to control the world. As you know, like the moon helps control the tides and different things that goes on, and the sun and everything has all these powers that plays on the earth and the other planets. He placed them on high and treated them with honor, making them servants who minister before him. It can be said that these are like mediums of divine influence. See, everything, serves the Creator according to the way they were created. And so they were looking and they seen the stars and the planets, the moons, that he had placed them and he'd given them powers. And said, accordingly, they said, these wise men and Enosh in that day said, accordingly, it is fitting to praise and glorify them and treat them with honor. They perceived this to be the will of God. Blessed be he, that they glorify and honor those whom he glorified and honored. Just as a king desires that the servants who stand before him be honored. Indeed, doing so is an expression of honoring the king. And so in a monarchy, a monarch, you've got your king and your queen, you've got the servants and your princesses and your other family of the king. And then they've got servants under them. They're military and the ones who actually serve like in the castle and right around the castle. And it is known that when these, like an ambassador of the king would go out into the kingdom, you treated the ambassador with the honor because he represented the king. And so this generation had the same thoughts about the stars and the spheres and the planets, that they were servants of God and therefore needed to be honored as such. And in honoring them, you honored the king. After conceiving of this notion, they began to construct temples to the stars, offer sacrifices to them. They would praise and honor them with words and prostrate themselves before them, because by doing so, they would accordingly to their false conception be fulfilling the will of God. They thought they were fulfilling the will of God by honoring his creations that seemed to emanate a power that came from them, that he gave them. This was in essence the worship of false gods. This is where the worship of false gods came into humanity. And this was the rationale of those who worship them, that they would not say that there is no other God except the star. At that time, they would say that. This message was conveyed by Jeremiah, who declared in Jeremiah 10, 7-8, who will not fear you, King of the nations, for you it is fitting. For to you it is fitting. Among all the wise men of the nations and of their kingdoms, there is none like you. They have one foolish and senseless notion. They conceived of their empty teachings as wood, and all that you alone are God. The foolish error consists of conceiving of this emptiness as your will. So we see that it is a foolishness when in worshiping something that is not the creator, worshiping something that is created, though you think you're honoring the king, you're not. When you're thinking you're doing this because it's his will, it's not. Then the Rambam goes on and says, after many years had passed, false prophets among the people who arose among the people who told the people that God had commanded them to say, serve this star or all the stars, sacrifice to it, offer libations, build a temple for it, make an image of it, so that all the people, including the women and the children and the common people, could bow down to it. So after a period of time, all these prophets appeared and claimed that God told them this is what they needed to do in honoring his servants. He, the prophet, would inform them of a form that he had conceived and tell them that this was the image of the particular star, claiming that this was revealed to him in a prophetic vision. In this manner, the people began to make images in temples and under trees and on top of mountains and hills. The people gathered together and they bowed down to all these images, and all the false prophets would say, "This image is the source of benefit or harm. It is appropriate to serve it and to fear it." Their priests would tell them, "This service will enable you to multiply and be successful. Do this, do this, or don't do this and don't do that." Subsequently, other deceivers arose and declared that a specific star or spear or angel had spoken to them and commanded them, "Serve me in this manner." He would then relate a mode of service, telling them to do this or don't do that. Thus, these practices spread throughout the world. People would serve images with strange practices, one more distorted after the other. Offer sacrifices to them and bow down to them. As the years passed, God's glorious and awesome name was forgotten by all mankind. It was no longer part of the speech or thought, and they no longer knew him. Thus, all the common people, the women and the children, would know only the image of wood or stone and the temples of stone to which they were trained from their childhood to bow down and to serve, and in whose name they swore.
Wow. Now, some would say that doesn't happen today, but that's nothing new to man. They still do that.
Yeah, they still do that. I mean, there's many of us, we can actually say the same things with some of the things that we all grew up with, and say, to which they were trained from their childhood to bow down and to serve, and to whose name they swore, because it's all they knew.
That's all they knew.
That's all they knew.
So, I'm going to bring up a couple different questions. This isn't something come up. This is something I think we need to present. So if that is something that they were trained in and they didn't know, I'm going to call it the truth. They didn't know the truth. Are they going to be held liable for that?
Well, I talked to something similar with that to one of my rabbi friends, and I asked him a question about something similar to that question. And I said, you go through like where I live at and where you live at, we kind of, in our state, we live kind of in the older part of the state, as it settled in from North Carolina and Virginia. We have roots in your area and my area that goes back, to the Civil War and even earlier than that in our area. And the Scots and the Irish in the late 1700s began to settle our area. And so you drive around and you can see some very old graveyards. I've been in them. I've seen gravestones from people born in the early 1700s buried there. And I asked my rabbi friend one time, I said, take no offense, but I said, God gave Israel the Torah, and it contains the knowledge that man needs to live by. And I said, but there have been hundreds of millions of people who've lived and died that's never heard the word of Moses the way it's supposed to be, that came down from 3,400 years ago. I said, so what about these folks? And, they lived over here in the backwoods of North Georgia East Tennessee. And, most of them never, it was an all day ride on a horse to the closest town. So most of them hardly ever got off their property unless they lived in a little village along or a little town along the railroad, like it's a little railroad towns down here. And so I said, what about these folks that did not know the truth of the Torah according to the prophets and the sages? And his answer was that the Creator judges a person based upon what they know at that time. Not their fault. We are like these folks that were generations in from Enosh. We're talking about, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 8, 10 generations from Enosh. And they didn't know anything else but that. And so the Creator holds a person accountable for what they know and what they do with what they know.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing about the Creator. A lot of people want to put ultimatums on others. Creator tells us his thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. And one of the things that this comes from a midrash that I'd learned, to tell you, it's really interesting, the thoughts of the Creator toward his non-Jewish creation. When Israel was being saved from Egypt, and the Egyptians were dying in the sea as it collapsed upon them, and Israel began to sing the songs. There's a midrash that's taught by some of the by the sages that the angels began to sing as well about Egypt being thrown in, this rider being thrown into the sea. And it is said that the Creator told the angels to stop singing. Only Israel could sing because they were the ones being saved. But the statement is you do not sing, for it is my creation that is dying in the sea. He did not, even though Egypt was horrible by the way we look at it. Even the sages seen that the Egyptians were still God's creation. And only he has to say so of what's going to be going on, what's going to be happening, with them, after that point.
Yeah.
One of the discussions we got in the other night in another little group that we're in is that, like, when we are studying our laws, when we're reading things that are stated, like the liability parts. When you violate something, you're liable, and you're liable by the hand of heaven. We are studying these things because we already understand. Once we understand that law, when we understand it's our responsibility for the Creator, then these words are being pointed toward us, not those who don't know.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so it's kind of a touchy subject, but the way my rabbi said, he said, the Creator judges based upon what you know, how you lived your life. We can't put definites on that because he's the one that controls everything and knows everything. Our responsibility is to live this life according to the way he wants us to live.
Right. Which, how do you break something like that? Now, I know, and and everybody in here in this Zoom meeting knows, some of the people listening and watching know, but can I just throw in a little thing here? I wasn't looking for it. I was happy where I was at. Mm-hmm. I'm not happy. I wasn't happy with everybody I met. Of course, who is?
No, who is?
Yep. And I wasn't happy with some of the venues that I had to travel into, being who I was. But I was doing the best of my ability to fulfill what I felt was the calling on my life. And I wasn't looking for this. This reality, it's almost like it was, I can use the term revealed. I could use the term it was there under my nose the whole time, but I refused to see it. I could use the term that as I look back in my life, the Creator planted people in my life that caused me to think. And suddenly, here I am. Here we are. Here my wife and I am. So what?
I like the way Rabbi Lazer Brody puts it. He says, "Do not be," and it goes back to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who Rabbi Brody's a student of, who lived a little over 200 years ago or so in the 1800s. Rabbi Nachman would say, "Do not be ashamed of your past, because your past is what brought you to where you're at today."
Yeah.
And I learned that several years ago, because when it's so easy when you start learning and you're going, like for myself, why did I live so much of my life this way? Why couldn't I had? But there was a purpose, and there's a purpose for the reason why you're at where you're at. And it's all a journey. One of my favorite shirts I saw down here at the Whitewater building was, the journey is the destination.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of our lives are a journey. And like you, I wasn't looking, with what we were talking a little bit before there, what I grew up in, the particular denomination I grew up in and my wife grew up in. I was fourth generation. She was third generation. If nothing had ever happened, I would still be there, because there was no reason to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like what you just said. But there was a day in 1995 when my spiritual rug got jerked out from under me. I didn't have no choice. The denomination I grew up in ceased to exist. Bam, gone. My wife and I were left, like everything that we grew up with, everything we knew was gone. We had to start over. And I would have never looked for anything else if it hadn't been for that. So there's sometimes, Hashem will allow certain circumstances, to come, in your life to help guide you. And because of that time, I began as an adult to look into the scriptures myself. I didn't have anybody else at the time. Everybody I had was gone. And so the Creator guides us in just our own individual. This shows his divine providence. He tailor makes everyone's path for themselves, and he leads them to where he wants them for their best benefit. And I went from that over into the Pentecostal church and in the ministry and, associate pastorate. And it just kept going. And, the older I got and the more I learned to study and things, and then he put people in my path that challenged me, would ask me questions that would cause me to research. And then in that research, you come along the way, you have those moments.
Yeah.
Kind of, I think that's how Emwella puts it, that those moments, So, and it's different for every individual, but it's so easy because there's so many out there that begins to hate their past. They hate what they were connected to in their past. And that hate for that can mess up that journey. I almost went in there. For about 2 years, I was I wasn't at the full hate level, but I was just one, and it took me about 2 years to get a hold of myself and saw that was wasteful. And then that's when I come across Rabbi Brody's teaching from Rabbi Nachman of that my past was the path that led me to where I'm at today. And I love this, is what like the rabbis say. Let's say you're living a life of a certain type of sin. And at some point in some time, you become disgusted of that sin that one you've been trapped in, and you do teshuvah, you do real repentance, and it draws you into the accompaniment of God. That sin now becomes a merit because it is what led you to repentance. It's kind of a hard concept sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's with our same thing with our past, of our path. There are things in our path that will cause us to make changes in our life that when we look back at that, those things that seem to be what we would say bad turned out to be good for us. Hope I answered your question.
I think you did. I think you did. One of these days, I know we're fixing to get over to another subject here, but one of these days, I want us to do a rubber meets the road discussion on challenging your faith. And, and a lot of times in false religions, it is incorporated in the DNA of that religion. Don't ask questions. Don't challenge what we're telling you. Don't look outside the box. If you do, you're giving up on your faith and you are the problem. So one of these days...
It's kind of a spiritual terrorism.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. All right. You ready to get on to our next one?
Go ahead.
Metaphoric description of the Creator. I know you've been studying all week on this one. Metaphoric description of the Creator. Jump into that.
Okay.
You want me to explain what it is, though, metaphoric?
Yeah, go ahead, because the Rambam, in the commentary, uses that 5 foot long word that you like to use. That surprises me that from a person from Townsend with dyslexia,
I know it.
Say that word.
Anthropomorphism.
That's a miracle. That is a miracle, right?
Nobody will understand that is a great miracle. Anthropomorphism.
Anthropomorphism. You got to understand. You got a Townsend, Eastern Tennessee mountain boy with dyslexia, being able to say a word that I can't even say.
So I went all the way through school. I went all the way through high school. I did not graduate. I got married. I liked 1 year I got married. But it didn't make any difference to me because I never did any work. I never took one spelling test. That's why I can't spell. The principals and teachers knew me by name. At the end of every year, I would go to the office. I'd have to get my which locker I had because that's where my books went in. I never did go down there and journey and find them any after that. And the principal would say, okay, Scotty, here's your locker number and here's your combination. Bring our books back. So, I remember at age of, I'm 63 now, so we're talking, it was probably in my late 40s. I got my first library card. And I wanted to know, I had to teach myself to study. And when I got my first library card, I took a picture of it and showed it to my father. And he said, I'm going to pass out. You going to the library. And so all of a sudden, these things just started coming to my mind, like hermeneutical study, eisegetical understanding. I heard the word eisegetical when I was about 20 years old down in Texas at 3 o'clock in the morning. I heard this minister on the radio talking about people doing eisegetical study. Well, that word went in one ear and went out the other. almost 30 years after that, that word suddenly came to my mind. And we was in a restaurant, and there was the waitress that was waiting on us was a college graduate. And I said, look, I'm trying to find this word. I do not know how it's spelt. I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly. Can you help me find it? She said, what is it? I said, I think it's like eisegetical. She went away for 5 minutes and came back and said, here's your word. And I was with a whole big group of people. And she said, here's your word. It means reading into the text exactly what you want the text to say, no matter what the text says. And I said, that had to be God. And so anyway, go ahead. Anthropomorphism.
Okay.
Giving a deity body functions.
The Rambam covers this actually in two of his works. One is the Mishnah Torah, and another one is one that is a very, I don't know how would you say it? It's a very complex work. And I had the book on my Kindle back when I was doing my studies with my first rabbi up in New York years ago, back in 2010. And I just happen to remember I had it because in this, it references a couple of chapters to help with this understanding. So I got it out and looked it up this week and was looking at these chapters. And I'm just going to use one example because there's so many. We don't have the time to go through every one of them, but I'm going to go through this one and you're going to get the gist. And there's actually another one that I'll cover when I finish this one that's well known. But the Rambam in his Laws of Foundations of Torah, chapter 1, starting in paragraph 9, he's talking about here, he says, what is the meaning of the expressions employed by the Torah? And it starts giving a list of what we would call human features. Below his feet in Exodus 24, written by the finger of God in Exodus 31, God's hand in Exodus 9, God's eyes in Genesis 38, God's ears in Numbers 11, and the like. So he goes through a list. So all these expressions were used to relate to human thought processes which know only corporal images. See, now when you understand, it makes sense. We go back and we think about the generation of Enosh, and they started making these statues and temples of the stars. Man has the tendency to want to be able to look upon that which he worships.
If I can throw this in, and you're probably going to cover this, is that like creating God in your image? Would that be like worshiping? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw that in that quick. It just come to my mind that way.
No, but it's interesting because your question kind of can relate with Exodus chapter 20, verse 2. Let me find it here. Exodus 20, verse 2. Exodus 20, verse 2, where it says, I am Hashem, your God, who has taken you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery. Verse 3 says, and you shall not recognize the gods of others in my presence. Where technically in the Hebrew, where the Hebrew says face is the word that's used for presence. Face, the Hebrew word for face represents presence, whether it be a man's presence or God's presence. And again, another physical thing but that commandment given to Israel, saying you shall not recognize the gods of others, technically in the Hebrew basically means you shall not put another God on my face. We shouldn't make anything from a physical or spiritual realm into an image to give it the face of God. for us to look at. So he says that the Torah relates to man through human, because of the human thought process, which only knows corporal images. For the Torah speaks in the language of man. It speaks in the language of man. So the Rambam goes and he talks about, for frequently the Torah uses that big fancy word of yours,
Anthropomorphism.
to describe God. And then he says, note this is his other work, and he's got about 4 or 5 chapters here where he talks about these individual things that we mentioned here. And I just chose, for the sake of time, I just chose the first one. I was going to list all of these, and I thought, well, it'll be a miniature book by the time I got done transferring the stuff from his book down to what would go in for this tonight. So below his feet, Exodus 24:10. And this was very interesting. So when it's talking about feet, it says, and the verse, it says in Exodus 24, verse 10, and it says, and they perceived the God of Israel, and beneath his feet was like the forming of sapphire brick, and like the appearance of a heavens or clarity. The Hebrew term here for feet is regel. It is a word that is used to designate several different things. So when the feet of God is used, now the hand of God, the eyes of God, all of them are going to have their own Hebrew words that in the Hebrew tells us something's going on. In English, we don't get to see some of this stuff, but in the Hebrew, it's all there. So the first actual practical thing is like a foot of a living being. Number 2, it denotes an object that follows another. And the example is, and all the people that follow you, literally means they are at your feet. When you're saying you're following someone, it literally means that they are at your feet. And then number 3, another significant word here, that is the root word of ragel is la ragli, means cause. In Genesis 30:30, and it says, and Hashem blessed you upon my arrival, i.e., my sake, for that which exists for the sake of another thing has the latter for its final cause. And on Zechariah 14:4, and on that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, can be explained by the following way. And all of the things caused by him, raglav, which is all part of this ragel, la ragli, raglav, is on that day on the Mount of Olives, all the wonders that will be seen, in which the Creator will be the cause. So under his feet, raglav denotes under that of which he is the cause, that which exists through him. So we can see here, when the feet is mentioned, there's something that is going on. There's a cause. There's a cause that is happening. And it's the same thing with the eyes and the hands. I didn't get into all the Hebrew words for these as translated into the English words, like what we see here, eyes, feet. And so we see here that just in this one, below his feet, is used in the language of man to show us that there are causes that are going on, things that are happening. It's beneath his feet. He goes on, he says, from Deuteronomy 32:4 says, I will whet my lightning sword. Does he have a sword? Does he have the need? Does he need to have a sword to kill? Rather, this is metaphoric imagery, similar. And it's all such expressions are metaphoric. A proof of this concept, one prophet says that he saw the Holy One, blessed be he, clothed in snow white, Daniel 7. And another one envisions him coming with the crimson garment from Batra, Isaiah 63. Moses, our teacher, himself envisioned him at the Red Sea as a mighty man waging war. And at Mount Sinai, he saw as a leader of the congregation wrapped in a talit. That's the Hebrew, what we call the Hebrew prayer shawl today. This shows that he has no image or form. All of these are merely expressions of prophetic visions and imageries, and the truth of the concept cannot be grasped or comprehended by human thought. This is what the verse in Job states. Can you find the comparison of God? Can you find the ultimate bounds of the Almighty? Matter of fact, 11:7. Hold up. I think I looked at see here. Yeah, in the Art Scroll Job, on the book of Job, where it says in 7, says, can you attain through knowledge of God? Would you penetrate to the uttermost reaches of Shaddai? And Rashi's comment on this is like, you understand nothing of the real God. How then can you be sure that you have fulfilled all your duties toward him? And at the end, Rashi says, how can you reduce a God who is so great to human dimensions? And he questions Job in that area. Go ahead, Scotty.
I'm looking for something somebody just brought up on Power Faith Radio, and I'm looking for where it is at. I
wanted to bring one more up since you're looking for that.
Go ahead.
And actually, you brought this passage up when we were discussing this the other day. Genesis is interesting. Like I said, I love Genesis. I've been studying the book of Genesis for I don't know how many years now, and it never seems like there's never a time I don't pick it up. There's something I find out new. It's talking about when Adam and Eve heard the voice of God in the garden.
That's one of them we've been discussing right here. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. I got text up. Go ahead.
Okay. What version of English do you have?
Okay, so I've actually got the Chabad.org, and I also have the Art Scroll.
Okay. How about if you just go to the King James or any one of those others?
I have it pulled up here. So
when I went to, I used to have the eSword on my laptop, but I went to, I think it was, what is that one called? Bible Hub or something?
Yeah.
Something like that. I went to that and I was looking because I used to have one that had 30, 40 translations, including the Hebrew. That was interesting. So I don't have that app anymore. So I went to Bible Hub and I was looking at all the translations, and I told you to pick the King James because it doesn't matter if you go King James, New King James, International, American Standard. I went through all the list and they pretty much all say the same, translate the same way. And I want you to read what we all grew up with, what it says, because when I was looking at this week, I learned something that I didn't know.
Okay, good deal.
I love Rabbi Hirsch. He gets into the Hebrew.
Yes. So this is from the KJV.
Yeah, any one of them there.
Okay, and this is the 8th verse that I'm going to be reading from in the chapter 3, verse 8. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, as if God needs to walk in the cool. And of course, it went on to say, and Adam and his wife hid themselves, walking in the cool of the garden.
Now, what I'm about to say, I'm not putting down I'm just going to inform you, like we talked about last week, in an educational, linguistic way. This is not religious. This is linguistic. The verse does not say walking in the Hebrew. So technically walking is an incorrect word there. It's an incorrect direct translation. Once you understand what the verse says, I don't even know, now that I understand what it's really saying, walking is, to me, for me, is really a not the correct word that could be used there.
Would that be putting anthropomorphism on this text?
Yes, it does, and it can, and it really would if it used the Hebrew word for walk, which we're going to show. It's the word for walk in Hebrew is not there.
Okay.
In that passage. Rabbi Hirsch has it translated as, they heard God's voice in the garden withdrawing in the direction of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves among the trees of the garden. I'm going to skip this first part and probably want to come back to it.
Now you're reading from the Hirsch.
I'm reading from the Hirsch Hamish on my favorite study of the book of Genesis comes from, because the way, you know me, I like the way I like to say, he gets into the Hebrew. The word that is translated as walk in other versions, the Hebrew word is metahalek. Metahalek. The Hebrew word for walk is halak. Halak. Now that word is in this word at the very end of it, halak. It's in there, and it's conceivably why it's translated as walk in a lot of English I'm just going to put it this way: non-Jewish English translations.
Okay.
Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So the root word is there, but the word mitahalek, this says this first. Halek, or walk, in Hebrew generally denotes movement toward a goal. You're walking toward something. So when you're reading this in the English and it said they heard God's voice in the garden, walking in the direction, you would almost have this mental thought that maybe God's walking toward them.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it's actually the opposite. The word mitahalek denotes movement that restricts itself to a limited area. Where walking in God's ways, the Hebrew word for walking in God's ways, within the limits prescribed to you, the trying to look, see if this other, the hapalel, I'm reading that right, indicates a conscious withdrawal from other areas, as well as a positive concentration in a delimited area. According to the sages, it is interpreted that the Shekinah, the divine presence, departed and withdrew into its own realm here with this word, with mitahalek, means that it denotes that his movement was restricting, meaning going backwards. And it talks about going into the day and what that means. I'm not going to completely get on in that. It says, Rabbi Hirsch says, for the Shekinah dwells with man centrates itself in Israel's camp. When Israel said yes to the covenant at Mount Sinai, the Creator at this time in Genesis 8 withdrew his presence, his divine presence from man into a certain level. But with Israel at Mount Sinai, that's coming back. That's the reason why the Jews are the Creator's chosen people, because they're actually to be in the place where they are returning back to the same kind of relationship that Adam and Eve had before the fall, when the Creator actually withdrew. So this word in verse 8 talks about his presence, his divine presence was withdrawing from them. And he says, God draws near and comes to us in the midst of an earthly human life in all diversity, and provided that the spirit of human life on earth is holy. It says they heard God's voice. This is how Rabbi Hirsch translates verse 8. They heard God's voice in the garden receding. Then he gets into what it means into the day, the direction of the day. He gets into what all that means, which I'm not going to get into that tonight. But here it's not necessarily a metaphorical aspect that God was walking. This word actually represents what happened because of the sin, that God's presence was beginning to pull back and not be as strong as it was. It was pulling back to a certain area in a certain way. And at Mount Sinai, when Israel said yes to the covenant, then all of that was coming. That was like it wasn't receding, it was a coming. And so that's the reason why Israel is the light to the nations, to help us when we're learning our 7 laws that's required upon us and we're living that way. Then that divine presence instead of receding, it begins to flow back toward us. And so it's not necessarily a metaphorical use in that passage. That's one of the things that I learned, because when you mentioned it, I went there and I looked at it, and I was looking at the Hebrew. And so I can see how those who doesn't know really the language that like the Jews have, like being born with it, could translate that as walk, because the root word of walk is there. But in this, the word is used to represent a movement, but the movement is not toward a goal, as in walking. It's a movement of something that is receding, that's falling back.
So can I say it like this? So here, Adam and Eve, they knew what they had done. They knew they were naked. They were actually covering themselves in the process. And the hearing that they heard was actually the presence of the Creator diminishing.
Well, it was rescinding.
Rescinding.
It was rescinding.
Okay. Because of what they done, or just?
Yes, it just because of where they were at that time and what they done. The Creator hasn't left man. Don't get me wrong.
Correct.
Saying that it doesn't say that the divine presence left. It just said it receded.
Okay.
And it's another aspect of that. We're human. The Creator, one, is he doesn't occupy one space and place at a time. It's
correct.
But he can restrict himself. And that's even a deeper subject. And that's what he was doing there. He wasn't leaving them, but he was restricting, I guess in human terms, we might say quantity or amount. I may even be using the wrong words there.
Would it kind of go hand in hand with when we make a mistake or when we do something, knowing it is wrong, we feel the presence of God because of us we feel we're not as connected as we were.
And that's even in physical life. If you're a child and you do something mom and dad, kind of warned you against, and you did it, they're your parents, that you love them, but you just know that relationship was just, had pulled back just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it was gone. It can be rehad. I mean, that's the beauty of repentance and teshuvah, which we can get all into that later. That was one of the greatest gifts that God ever gave mankind, was that he could repair himself.
Right.
And we do that through repentance. But if we witness that and we sense that in our own physical lives with our own parents and parents with a child, sometimes we'll have to pull back because something the child is doing, the parent has to pull back in a certain way. But once things have made right, then that everything's back to where it was. So even in a parent, they have to rescind not their love, but you know what I'm saying? It's almost like their presence in a way.
Yeah.
They have to show that the child's not in a right place.
Right.
And hoping that child would correct that child, correct themselves.
Right. Okay, we got two more things to cover.
Okay.
We've been at it an hour and 10 minutes, but we can't. Veronica put in a very good question. She's listening over on one of the Facebook pages. And of course, this is kind of, you'll know where it's going. What about when talking to Hashem, you imagine him as something physical? Now, is that our description of him? Does that make?
I had certain things I put up because I thought I might not get into them tonight. Hold on.
And then I just got one more quick thing I want you to
pull my bookmark out. Where was that at? A bookmark come out of this, and I don't. I'm just going to quote it.
Okay.
I'm going to quote it because my bookmark fell out of here. I believe it's in Deuteronomy. Let me see if it was in this right here. Genesis, hold on.
That's not the Deuteronomy chapter 4, is it?
Hold on. It might be.
Because I've got that one pulled up.
I don't know if they're not for what. I did this because I thought we'd run out of time, and now you brought. Like I said, I read so much through the week. I sent you the picture I had.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Now, what led me over into that passage? If you don't mind, just give me a second. I want to look something.
You're good. You're good.
Real quick.
I had pulled up Deuteronomy 4 and 15 because that's the next verse I wanted to discuss with you. Just kind of putting in. I know we're running out of time, but
Hold on here. I think you were really close to where I was at. Hold on, let me Dalit. You go to Dalit. Oh, that's 6. Dalit. Almost there. Okay.
Remember, this is live. It's not Memorex.
Yeah, this is exactly where I was. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
I'm coming back. Hold on.
Okay.
I was headed in the right direction.
But you found it.
Amazes me how much I remember sometimes. then I walk into a room and don't remember why I'm there. Go figure.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
My wife even, she goes, "How could you have forgot that? You can tell me what's on such and such page in one of your books." I'm like, I don't know. Go ahead. What was you wanting to go?
I was just going to bring up that text, but
state your question again.
Okay, let me pop it up here.
Oh, about prayer.
About prayer, and let me. So Veronica asked, what about when talking to Hashem, you imagine him as something physical?
I'm going to answer it with this passage right here, and I think you'll understand why. There is, this is one of the things that God, Hashem told Israel, and I contacted Pesach on this because this was an instruction for Israel. And so I asked him, I said, in this instruction, it's not a commandment, but it's kind of like, I think it's one of the instructions that he gave them is applicable for all of us as we draw, to the one true God of Israel. He tells Israel in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9, only take heed and guard your soul exceedingly so that you do not forget the facts that your own eyes have seen, and so that they do not depart from your heart all the days of your life, and make them known unto your children and to your children's children. I would have to say, giving God an image in your mind is not healthy for your soul, because the Creator says, only take heed to guard your soul exceedingly that you do not forget the facts. The fact is that we saw no image, or they saw no image. We see no image of the Creator. He has no form. And that was a fact for Israel, because it's interesting if you think about it, that you saw with your own eyes. They did not see an image, and that's a fact. And so we need to guard our souls from such things like creating an image of God, whether it be a man on a throne or whatever image you want to put there in your mind, because it's not guarding your soul. And so that could cause an issue, like for Israel. And, they have a lot of fences that they're told to put around the Torah so they don't break the law. We're not given such a situation, but we can learn to put our own boundaries up so that we don't violate our own commandment. Like in a situation, do your best when you're praying, do not have an image of any kind of sort in your mind. And here we see Israel says to guard your soul, because such things like that will go down into your soul and can contaminate it.
So, Terry, while you're there, would you just jump down and read let's 14, 15, and 16, 17. Could you read that real quick?
14 through 17?
Actually, on down into 18, just real fast. I think this gives a great explanation of what you're talking about.
Fast and me don't go in the same sentence.
I understand that. Me too. Slow and steady wins.
All righty. You remember who won the race.
Yeah. So start about 14.
And God commanded me at that time to teach you the statutes and social ordinances, so that you may carry them out in the land in which you are passing over to take possession of. So take heed exceedingly for the sake of your souls. Here's that passage verse again. For you saw no manner or form in that day. See, that connects with the one I went to on 9.
Yeah.
Take heed to your souls that you saw no manner of form on that day that God spoke to you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire.
Now here it comes.
So that you will not become corrupt and make yourselves an image, the representation of any form whatsoever, the likeness of male or a female, the likeness of any animal on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies upon the heavens, and the likeness of any creeping thing on the ground, and the likeness of any fish or creature that is in the water beneath the earth.
Okay.
And again, the instruction to take heed to guard your soul.
What?
Take heed to guard your soul.
Add 19 in there. Did you already close it up?
No, I ain't closed up.
Add 19 in there, would you?
And so that you will not lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and all the stars and all the entire host of heaven, and allow yourself to be carried away and cast yourself down before them and serve them, which God your God has assigned to all the nations beneath the whole heaven.
One more.
Oh, you want to go to 20? You want me to finish? Yeah. I can finish up book of Deuteronomy. You want me to? But you, God, took when he led you from the iron crucible from Egypt, so that you may remain his as his heritage nation on this day, as on this day.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. That just sort of brought a closure, even when we started, about the polarity. No,
right.
Not polarity. The now you're getting me mixed up. What is it? What is it? I can't.
Plurality.
Plurality. Yeah.
You're thinking of electricity.
I am.
So yeah, I think it's, in all of this, in understanding and learning the oneness, and in the plurality, and of the metaphoric language of man that the Torah is in, when we take all of this into account, a good place to end is take heed to guard your soul, to guard your soul. And to know that Israel saw no image, and they were told to teach this to their children and their next generation. That's why we have what they're saying today. It's been passed on since Moses, and for us of the nations, though we were not there on that day of Mount Sinai, we know that Israel was, and they're an eternal nation. And they're to be the light unto the nations. We are to learn from their experiences.
Yeah.
And so from that, as Pesach was saying, when you come to the knowledge of the one true God of Israel and his essence, in which you totally can't actually comprehend because being finite, and we rid ourselves of these plagues that's been brought upon us throughout the nations, of all these different images of God in any form that's been made by the nations, and we rid ourselves of those things, there is no form, no physical form, and no spiritual form. And I didn't even bring this up the other day, but in Genesis chapter 1, where he says that he created the heavens and the earth, the Torah sages teaches us the heavens represent the spiritual realm, and the earth represents the physical realm. And see, the Creator created the spiritual realm. Thus, the Creator himself is not even spiritual. That's the spiritual, what we call spiritual realm, the angels and the like, they are a creation. And he is outside of that creation. His essence is beyond our comprehension. That's why he's Ein Sof. It's beyond our comprehension, because if we say that God is spiritual, then we're putting a creative attribute to his image.
Right.
And so that's why it says, they did not see anything. There is no form. He even tells us, the Creator himself says, you saw no form. So once we come to this, we've got to take care of, to guard our souls. And so like praying and imagining God in some kind of image, whether it be an old man with a long beard and white robe, or, a king on a throne, or, whatever the image that you can think of, those images are false and could be misleading.
Can you talk about 2 more minutes? I'm typing in somebody an answer.
All righty. So was there anything, Bob, you see anything on the metaphorical images that we needed to cover? I think we covered that on the hands, the feet, and the eyes.
Well, what I was speaking of was way beyond, it wouldn't be anything that's in the area we're talking about. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you about ready, Scotty?
I am. And Will just put up his hand. I think I was typing.
Oh, okay.
Will, you got a question or?
Yeah, I just wonder, I understand what you're saying about God has no physical form, all this stuff, but that makes it easier for people to pray if they want to think of God being the picture on the God touching Adam's hand on the, what is it? Can't even think of the name in Rome, the cathedral in Rome, the Da Vinci Cathedral. If they want to think that, what harm does it do as long as they're praying to the same God, and it makes it easier for them to do it, to understand it better?
What was you going to say, Scotty?
Okay. I'm going to say that I think it's part of training again. I think we have to train ourselves again of the knowledge that God does not have a bodily form. I know it's hard, but I think in this training, we will shed or break apart from any of our past thoughts and beliefs about who and what God is. It is hard. And now this is just my opinion.
And it doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight. This is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is in the book of so-and-so and chapter so-and-so. I can't, but I can tell you, I myself, it was a hard thing to break. Especially when you see those pictures of the hand reaching down and the finger touch. Oh, that's where I want to be. I want to be in that touch. Well, why haven't you always been in that touch? He is there. And again, I'm using that term metaphorically. Just the text we actually just read said don't do that, or you're going to give him a bodily form. Even when you use the word him is metaphoric.
Yeah.
Just throwing that in the pot here so I can stir it up and make a good stir of soup. And it's hard to break that. It is very hard to break that. But it is a training that each one of us has to do with and in ourselves.
Yeah, and it, like I said, it's not gonna happen overnight. And if it doesn't happen anytime soon, don't beat yourself up over it. Creator knows you're in that direction, and it takes in relating with God. For me and my journey, I had to learn there are some words in the English language that I try not to refer to God in prayer using those words or even speaking about him, because certain words in English conjures up images. And so for me, I had to work on myself to try to eliminate certain descriptive words from my vocabulary, which are not gone. I still slip up from time to time, but like in speaking to the creator, I try not to use these words, or in talking about the creator, I try not to use these words because they conjure up specific images that, like our culture, when you say it, immediately, boom, in your mind, you've got this thought. And so that's what I had to do in my own walk.
Well, I understand that for the adult. And if you've had some other idea before you decide what your religion, or you recognizing the one God. But I'm thinking, like, when my sons, when they were growing up, we never had discussions like this when they were like in religious school. And I pretty well knew what was going on in the synagogue religious school, but I don't think they ever were talking on a level like this where they ever showed them picture books of God, God before and stuff. So I don't know how they were thinking in their head as a child.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a natural thing for some reason. Just even society itself presents God in that way, and if I'm just speaking personally here. Because I've talked to people who have never been in any kind of religious organization or religious institution, and when the subject of God comes up, automatically they just picture this man sitting on a throne, floating on a cloud, and so we just have to break ourselves from that. It's an individual thing, and I will tell you that as you train yourself to eliminate those images, you will begin to see and understand the vastness of the Creator.
Right. And something else too, I want to bring out. We are talking about the Noahide laws here. When we're talking about the prohibition of idolatry, in the plain and simple language, there are several aspects of actions that we are prohibited to do that violates that commandment. Having these images like in your mind and things like that may be way down in the area, what we call the details of idolatry, but they're not actually violations of actions that we are held accountable for. Did I word that right, Scotty?
Yeah.
So don't think that you're an awful sinner, that maybe you struggle with not having some kind of image in your mind as you say pray to God or think about God. That in itself doesn't violate the technical aspect of our prohibition.
Right.
And when we get back into studying the laws again, that's some of the areas that I really want to cover, is what are we technically responsible for?
Well, how does this apply to children?
How does this apply to children?
Yeah,
children learn by example.
Tell them that, but it seemed like that'd be a natural way they would think.
That would be a natural way that they would think. Again, this is an area of self-improvement and self-refinement. Yeah. And you can't really share that with your children until you've actually, I can't go back. My children are adults. They're in their 30s. One's married with children. My other daughter and her boyfriend, talking about it, and I've tried to go back and talk a little bit to them, because this stuff I did not understand when they were children. But these are things of refinement, not necessarily any kind of violation at this point of our understanding, because the violation of our commandments deals with specific actions, not necessarily your thoughts. Thoughts is actually brought up into it in a little bit later, but the main thing we learn in our responsibility with the Creator deals with actions. Yeah. Tonight, what we're dealing with talking about is stuff that's in refinement, stuff that we question, because now we're learning that there is no form and no images and no bodily parts. And we're just kind of talking tonight how that affects what we already knew and have already lived. And it's not expected that you're going to, okay, I just learned this, I'm not going to do that no more. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
So,
All right, Terry, it has been an hour and 35 minutes.
oh wow.
I'm going to bring us to a close. And you said you didn't think you had too much to say.
No, I ended up putting up about 4 books that I thought I had a whole stack. I took a picture of it. I said, Scotty, see what you did. And this was only on one question. So as the week went by, I'm like, okay, I know Scotty's going to have more questions. So I started, well, I can just take this, let's whittle it down a little bit for time's sake. And then here he has me drag them all back out.
I have a couple of questions. I'm going to send them to you this week because I think I don't want to spring those on you.
Okay.
So, and I'm not going to present them now, or we'll be here for another hour and a half. So,
no, I can. Hey, guys, keep Scotty busy with your questions.
yeah.
Keep him busy.
I try to refine them down. Sometimes I get like 15 or 20 questions that are dealing with almost the same subject. And so I'm trying to filter them into one question so it would cover all the bases. And it's working out good. Okay. All right, everybody with Power Faith Radio and still hanging on with us, we thank you so much for coming and tuning this way tonight. The Georgia group said they had 61 in there tonight, and she's going to have to start raising money for donuts because it's costing more to get them people in there than it is. But we thank you so much for letting us know that, and everybody else who is participating and kind of sending some questions through Power Faith Radio. We thank you so much. Those of you that are listening or watching, or maybe you'll watch the recording later on in B'nai Noach Fellowship or A Simple Walk, we thank you so much. Remember, those of you in A Simple Walk, you can share those videos with all your social media platform. And as always, we're sponsored by Outreach Noah. You can find us at a couple different places. Go over to YouTube, just type in Outreach Noah. We'll come up while you're there. Subscribe to that channel. Hit that notification bell that you'll be notified every time a new video goes up, and go to outreachnoah.com webpage and send an email to outreachnoah@gmail.com. Everybody, we'll see you all next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Shalom.